Welcome to the Angular Speed Dial component tutorial. The Syncfusion Angular Speed Dial component is an extension of the Angular floating action button, displaying a list of action buttons when clicked. It shows action buttons in linear and radial directions. In this video, I will show you how to integrate the Angular Speed Dial button into the Angular Grid component and change its position, display modes and directions, and other basic features. I will start with the application creation process. I'm going to create an Angular application using the Angular CLI tool. Make sure you have installed the latest version of Node.js. First, open Visual Studio Code and install the Angular CLI using the npm install-g at angular/CLI command. As I have already installed it, I am skipping this step here. Next, I will create a new Angular project. I use the ng new project name command and name my project example. I am creating a project with the option to add a CSS style sheet, so I choose the CSS option. The project creation has started, and it is creating an Angular project with its dependencies. Now let me navigate to the project folder. To add the Syncfusion Angular Speed Dial component, install the Syncfusion Angular Buttons package using the npm install at syncfusion/ej2 Angular Buttons --save command. This will install the package along with its dependencies. Before using the Syncfusion component, I need to register the trial license key. I open a main.ts file and import the register license method from the Syncfusion ej2 base package. Using this method, I register the trial license key. To generate this license key, refer to the link in the description below. The application is now configured to use Syncfusion components. Before adding the components, I would like to explain the primary actions to be performed by the speed dial. You all know that CRUD operations in the data grid are primary actions. The idea here is to add the speed dial over the data grid component at the bottom right position and display the CRUD operations as action items when the speed dial is clicked. So let me install the Syncfusion Angular Grids package using the npm install at syncfusion/ej2 Angular Grids --save command. This will install the package along with its dependencies. Now I open the app component.ts file and import the speed dial module from the Syncfusion ej2 Angular Buttons package. Next, import the grid component module from the Syncfusion Angular Grids package. Then register both modules within the imports array of the component section. Next, to reference the CSS styles to speed dial and grid, navigate to the styles.css file and import the material theme. Here, I have also added dependent CSS references for pop-ups, split buttons, navigations, etc. Then, I move to the app component HTML file and remove the default code. As I said, I will define the Angular Data Grid component. I add the existing data grid code snippet here. I also add its corresponding data in the app component.ts file. To learn how to integrate the Syncfusion Angular Grid component into the Angular application, please check the video given in the YouTube card. Also, you can refer to the documentation link in the description below. Next, I add the speed dial component by adding the button tag with the ej's speed dial attribute. I want to display an edit-like icon for the speed dial. So I add the open icon CSS property and set the predefined classes the icons in the edit. I also add a CSS reference for the ej2 icons package. Then, to show 3 action items, add, edit, and delete, I navigate to the app component TS file and import the speed dial item model class from the Syncfusion Angular buttons package. Then, declare an array called items of type speed dial item model and add an array of objects with a text property. I then assign this array to the items property of the speed dial element. I save the changes and run the application using the ng-serve command. The Syncfusion Angular grid component is rendered with the provided data source, and the speed dial button is rendered at this default bottom right position on the page. Next, to place the speed dial on the data grid, I add an ID property to the grid and set an appropriate value. Then I define the target property of the speed dial and set the ID of the grid to it. In the Styles section, I add the relative position style to align the speed dial button. See, the speed dial is at the bottom right corner of the data grid. When I click it, primary action buttons are shown. Next, I will show you how to add icons to the action items. I set the icon CSS property for the action items with appropriate predefined built-in class names. Check now, the icons are added to the action items. By default, the speed dial button is positioned at the bottom right corner of the target element. Apart from this default position, it also supports top left, top center, top right, etc. Now I will show you how to display the speed dial at the top right corner. I set the position property to the top right. Check now, the button is positioned as specified. Notice that the action items are displayed based on the button position. You can change the display direction using the direction property. The supported directions are left, right, up, down, and auto. To display action items to the left, I set the direction property to the left. If you want to display a tooltip instead of text for the action button, replace the text field name with the title. Checking now, action buttons are displayed on the left, and tooltips appear when hovering over them. Notice that the speed dial action items are displayed in a list-like format, vertically or horizontally, because the default display mode is linear. I can use the mode property to change its display pattern. I set the mode property to radial. See, the action items are displayed in a circular pattern. Next, I will show you how to customize the radial menu using the direction and offset properties. To do that, I first import the radial settings Modal class. Then, I define an object called radial settings of type radial settings model. The action items, by default, render in the clockwise direction, so I set the direction property to any clockwise and set the offset to 50 pixels. I assign this radial settings object to the radial settings property of the speed dial element. See, the action items are now shown in the anticlockwise direction, and the distance between them is reduced to the defined offset value. Next, I will show you how to customize the style of the speed dial button using predefined CSS classes. By default, the primary style is applied. To render it without any background color, set the CSS class property to outline. See, the outline style is applied. Next, let's see how to customize the appearance of the action items using a template. First, I define a template using the ng template element and add the reference variable named item template. Then declare the local variable items to access within the template. Within this element, I add a division element with a CSS class item list. Next, add the span tag with a CSS class of icon and a style for aligning the template elements. Within the styles.css file, I define those classes and CSS styles like padding, background color, etc. Then in the HTML file, I assign this item template object to the item template property of the speed dial element. Look here, the action items are customized with the defined template. Finally, I will show you how to add a new record to the grid when the add item is clicked. To edit grid records, I import the edit service from the Angular Grids package and add it into the providers array of the component section. Then declare the edit settings variable and enable the allow adding property and set the mode as dialog. Next, move to the app component HTML file and assign this object to the edit settings property. As I said, I want to add a new record when the add item is clicked, so add the click event to the speed dial and assign the callback method clicked. Moving to the app component TS file, first import the speed dial item event args. Then define the clicked method. Next, to add a record to the grid, I need its instance. So, in the app component HTML file, I add a reference for the grid element. Moving to the app component TS file, I import the view child decorator to get the reference for the grid component, and then import the grid component from the Syncfusion Angular Grids package. Using the view child decorator, I get the reference to the grid component and create an instance for it. Then, within this event handler method, if the item's title is add, I call the built-in add record method to add a new record to the grid. I also change the button position to its default value by removing the position property. When I click on this add action item, I can add a new row to the data grid. Look, here is the newly added record. In this video, I showed you how to add this Syncfusion Angular speed dial component to an Angular application and integrate it into the Syncfusion Angular grid component. I also showed how to configure its position, direction, and display modes. To see a working example, download it from the GitHub link in the description below. I have also provided a link to check if you qualify for a free license key to use our Angular products through our community license. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.